Everything fine, so should I start?
So Alexa, you happy with Hiba starting?
Yep.
Okay, then I will let the other guys in. Okay. So now you can start. Enjoy your meeting.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you.
Welcome everybody to our session on accelerators and really creating impact, leveraging that power of bringing together experts, entrepreneurs, different members of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and leveraging all that to create better businesses and a better world. We have two exciting speakers for you today who are genuinely two of the most forward-thinking leaders of accelerators that I know. And I personally am incredibly eager to hear them speak, even though I've seen their slides. I want to hear the stories behind them, and I hope you will find them equally exciting and insightful. I will be moderating the whole session, but also the chat during the talks. So if at any time you would like to ask a question, before you forget it, just put it in the chat and I will make sure your questions are answered later. If there are several questions that are the same, I will put them together and ask it. Our format today is going to be two short presentations. We'll get through Alexa and Hiba's presentation in one go, and then we're going to have a dialogue. I have some questions for them, you have questions for them, and the rest of the morning we're going to discuss. So please do put your questions in the chat, but other than that, please sit back, enjoy, and be inspired. So Hiba, can I please invite you to the stage, so to speak? I'll hand you controls in a second. Hiba is a dynamic serial entrepreneur and leads the BMW Foundation's Respond Accelerator, and she's going to tell you what they do, how they do it, why they do it, and what next. So Hiba, here is your presentation.
Thank you so much, Shima, for the introduction. Let me check here that I can control the slides. Yeah, great. So yeah, welcome to our session and thank you so much for being here with us. It's really an exciting day and being at Rakamaya. We're very much looking forward to have an inspiring sessions with you. My name is Hiba Agib. I'm the Chief Executive of the Respond Accelerator and program that was launched at the BMW Foundation and operated by Unternehmer almost 1.5 years ago. Time flies, obviously. And it's the first, the idea behind it is that's the first accelerator to be promoting responsible leadership. And I go deeper into the responsible leadership part and sustainable, scalable business models at the same time. So it's something that's been always very important to me to talk about technology and tech for good and how to scale up technology and tech for good and bring it closer to investments and to networks that matter for them to be scaled up and to help us have a sustainable future. And looking at the economic systems and the financial systems, entrepreneurs are playing a major role in these dynamics. So founders, innovations, and they can pretty much help pushing forward for a sustainable and just future. And here you see everyone involved in the whole ecosystem, and you can, I hope, all support me in this, that we need everyone to be on board in order to really actively have an impact. So going to the next slide, let me check if I'm, this is shortly about Respond, and it's about, as I mentioned, promoting scalable solutions and scale-up solutions that are tackling environmental and economic challenges and trying, I know there is a lot of discussions on balancing environmental, societal, and economical needs. If it's a balance, if it's regenerative, there are so many discussions on that. But we know, all of us, that definitely something needs to be changed crucially. And it's our role to support entrepreneurs and investors to see the possibilities and work closer together in order to push forward sustainable business models. And this is what we're trying to do. It's a lot through, like, it's the Respond is a 5-month accelerator program. Before the pandemic, it was planned to be completely in Munich. Now we are in a hybrid mode, and but we have even last year had like 3 sprints in Munich from where entrepreneurs come from all over the world to be with us, and we talk about sustainability, about innovation, about leadership, and what's very important, being a Responsible Leaders Foundation, a network foundation, is that we believe in the power of networks and the importance of bringing everyone on board. And as you see here, we have so many forward thinkers and institutions that are offering new models of investments, new models to measure impact and to communicate it along with the profit and financial successes of startups. We have a global network. I'm sure you know Bits and Pretzels in Munich, Founder Festival, which is very well known worldwide. We're trying to connect the dots and bring people from all over the world with new ideas, how to support startups and how to support investors to be closer and working together. So going to the focus areas we selected this year, we thought future of work and solutions for the dynamically and fast-growing change in work environments, and what role the human being will have in this rapid transformation, digital transformation, climate related transformation is so important. So this is our first area of innovation we focus on this year. The second one, sustainable urbanizations, how our cities, how our citizen engagement could be using digital solutions, new digital solutions. And the third, responsible economy, which is really a big area. And what we've seen having the screened applications this year, there's a massive amount of innovations in this area which need to be scaled up. Circular economy is not a trend anymore. We all know that it's a necessity. A lot of transparency in production lines, in consumer patterns and all of that. So this is where this area is about. And it was really interesting to screen the applicants this and last year. Our criteria are, like I mentioned, sustainability needs to be in the core of the business model. It's about innovation, so you have to have a cutting edge technology, because we believe you would have an even greater impact if you know that your technology is competitive and it's scalable and you can get many people on board to push it forward. First, attraction and leadership. We look into the teams, we look at aspects of diversity, of female leadership. We want to select teams who are dynamically working together and who want to learn and have us accompanying the journey of being responsible leaders, reflecting on their own journey and growing and being interested in growing their vision and their impact in the world. I will not go into depth in the selection process, which is really an exciting one. You see here, we receive applications from all over the world. Would really be interested in having even more, being an Egyptian from the MENA region, strong applications, but we're getting there. And maybe in brief, you all know that the share of female founders, for example, in Germany, 15.7% in the landscape is not very high. We're very proud to have 4 of 10 female founders. Not yet 5 to 5, but at least coming closer to that. We look into the teams, as I mentioned, because not only it's cool for the team dynamics, but also in terms of collective intelligence as a very measurable factor of success and long-term success of startups and of corporates and of teams. So it's a very important one for us. And these are the areas where we got a lot of applications: circular construction, new materials, supply chain transparency, waste reduction. You see how many business models are having sustainability in the core and are being competitive on a financial market perspective. So there's a lot to be done there, and I really encourage you to do so. And finally, in the frame of respond activities, it's not only about the accelerator, because we have this bigger message behind us about supporting a sustainable future and more just one. So we collaborate with festivals, like I mentioned. We have a very big demo night, and this year innovation days, where we talk about sustainability and what needs to be done in this ecosystem to push it forward. We have partners all over the world. We have the Tech for Good report, which we published with Sifted, a spin-off of the Financial Times, talking about what's missing to even support Tech for Good innovations more. And last but not least, just to show you that sustainability in the core of tech innovations and business is so important and so widespread. Like I come from the medtech background, and there it was a core. In circular economy and responsive economy, it's a core. And even mobility as an area which has been always understood in a very specific way, having a broader perspective and looking at such a topic from a human development perspective, and mobility as an enabler for human development over years, and refocusing on the human need in order to develop new ideas. I want to really inspire you to think out of the box of new solutions, to tackle topics which are well established in a very new way. This is something that's interesting for us, and we started workshop series to screen all over the world in regions, solutions that give us a vision of a better future with a focus on mobility, on circular economy, on others. So this was a brief insight on Respond. And as I mentioned there, it's about accelerating responsible leadership, how to accelerate and support leaders to scale up their potential, their impact, and their solutions. Thank you so much, and handing over to you, Shima.
Thank you, Hiba, and perfect timing. Thanks a lot. Hiba, there's a quick comment in the chat if you would like to pick up on that while Alexa's talking. But thank you very much, and I definitely look forward to discussions. I've noted a few questions for you already, and I'm sure the audience has got more. So Alexa, welcome to the stage. Alexa is a SAP.io woman all the way, corporate career, moving through the departments, developing until she's now leading this initiative, another key thinker in this area, and a different perspective on very similar themes, because you'll start to see, I mean, this is the way forward. Future-proofing our businesses is the way these two accelerators are building businesses. It is about dynamic, diverse teams that lead dynamic, resilient businesses that solve real problems and therefore create value for themselves and the world. So Alexa, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Shima, and I'm delighted to be here with you and Hiba today, and to share a little bit about what we're doing and see how we can involve more startups and more of the community also in the MENA region. Do you want me to share my slides, or are you sharing from your screen?
Whatever works better for you. Hiba wanted me to share, but she was controlling it. If you're set up to share, please go ahead.
I can share. Just give me a second. Just bear with me. Anyway, I'll start talking and then I'll figure out the logistics of this. So what I am going, our approach is a little bit different to the one that Hiba just shared from the BMW group, and I think it's a nice contrast that just shows that there are many ways of approaching this topic. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we're good.
So for those of you who don't know SAP is Europe's largest business software vendor. We have products that cover any aspect of a business's needs in terms of software. 70% of the world's processes actually touch an SAP system. So the reach is very broad, and we actually have customers and partners across the world in all geographies. And we as a software vendor are working very closely with our customers. We also, though, recognize that we can't develop every bit of software that a customer needs. And we also recognize that many startups have very, very innovative solutions that we will not have the capacity or it's not part of the strategy to develop. At the same time, we want to provide our customers the access to this innovation in a very easy to use and easy to consume manner. And that is why we are working with founders, startups around the world to give them, to help them become part of our partner ecosystem. And again, SAP has many thousands of partners, but they're normally bigger partners, and the processes and the partner needs are very different. And what we saw was that startups have very different needs. They're a lot smaller, and so we developed this concept, and we developed the business unit, which we call SAP IO, which is small input, has a large output, to focus primarily on helping founders scale with SAP. And we do this both internally and externally. We did a big reset in terms of our startup activities in 2017 when we created this business unit. And I, like Shima said, I had the opportunity of being with this team from the very beginning to really look at how can we work with startups and how can we help innovators across many lines of business, across all industries, innovate with SAP and scale their businesses with SAP. So what we're really doing is we're building new partnerships or delivering new partnerships and products for SAP, and doing this on the outside with the startups and internally with employee ventures. So we're continuously looking for internal entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs who want to develop their solutions in the safety of a large corporate like SAP. And you can see some of the numbers on this slide. We're working with really a curated set of mentors, curated set that also, but a curated set of startups and internal ventures. We've got about 300 at the moment that we're working with, and working closely with over 1,000 SAP customers to really be the matchmakers between the startups and our customers, and really helping both sides. For us also, diversity is a very important topic, mainly because we clearly see that diversity drives innovation, and to truly have breakthrough ideas, come up with breakthrough processes, you need a diverse set of eyes and people looking at the same problem and contributing. And so we made a pledge in 2019 that 40% of all of the companies we work with have a female founder or an underrepresented founder. And I'll come to that in a little bit more detail. As I said, we have activities that focus on the inside, the intrapreneurship. Here we work with about 10,000 employees every year, trying to motivate them and to try and tickle the ideas that they have out of them, to encourage them to try and launch a venture inside SAP. A subset of these then get funding at the end of the year, and they have the opportunity then in the SAP IO Venture Studio to scale their businesses within SAP. As part of this intrapreneurship program, we have a program called 1 Billion Lives, which again is looking for solutions that will touch 1 billion lives and make the lives of 1 billion people in this planet better. So it's very closely aligned with the UN SDG goals, and it's really about social impact. And we have many, many great submissions every year that don't necessarily actually have to do something with SAP's core business, but there it's really a social aspect to that. On the external side, which I'll focus the rest of the conversation today around, is what we call the Foundries. These are locations around the world that are really working similar to the way Heba's program does it. We have 2 programs per location per year. And I'll come to the locations and how these work in a little bit. What we're trying to do, what we do in those programs, they're typically around a theme. And what we're doing is we're helping the startups integrate with SAP if they need data out of an SAP system, and also working with them on their go-to-market plans and how they can address our customer base. And then what we launched this year was the ICP.io Rising Stars program, where we do deep business development with the startups. Once they have finished their integrations, once they become SAP partners, they go on to a marketplace that we have for our customers, again, to get easy access and to get the ability to scale. And then we have a business development team that is focused then on really developing those partnerships and helping them to grow into big partners of SAP that then can work with the rest of our organization. So the mission is really to build the most diverse ecosystem of innovative startups across all lines of business and across all industries. We only focus on B2B cloud startups because that's who we can help best. Our business is a B2B business, and the competency to help anybody who's in B2C is very limited. And so we focus all of our programs on startups that are addressing our customers. And we've been recognized by the International Chamber of Commerce, and you'll see our 2 little awards that we're very proud of that we got at the end of last year, where we were recognized as a corporate startup star, as well as a corporate, one of the world's best corporate startup accelerators. As I said, we have locations across the world. You'll see here we're opening one in Shanghai later this year. This means that we have physical locations in these places, but the programs, especially since the spring of last year, because of the epidemic, have moved into a virtual setting. And from the start, we actually in San Francisco had companies from Latin America joining, or we've had in Berlin, we had Augmania, that is founded by Rania, who's Egyptian, but based in San Francisco. So the geography is less important. We work obviously with the ecosystem. We work very closely with the local ecosystem, but the local aspect is becoming increasingly blurred. And I don't actually think we will ever go back to 3 months in person in a specific location, because the results of this matchmaking between the startups and the customers was actually the best we've ever had last year in a completely virtual world. So we are thinking about how can we increase a little bit the networking aspect and the sharing of experiences, which is still better in a person-to-person relationship or a situation. But don't, if you're sitting here and based in any other country beyond the ones that have an orange or yellow dot on them, it still means that we are looking for companies from around the world, because innovation isn't only located where there are startup hubs. As I said, we have 2 programs per year in these 10 locations around different themes. And I'll show you the importance of sustainability also for SAP as I go a bit further and look and give you a bit of an outlook towards what we have coming up next year. Sorry, at the end of this year. As I said, it's very important for us to actually find a win-win-win value proposition. So for us, we're looking at how can we provide value to our customers by giving them access to startups where we've done a lot of due diligence, startups that are already pre-integrated, and there's an ease of use for our customers. For the startups, it's an ability or an opportunity to scale quicker. Because we open the door to our customers, and because of we like to call it halo effect of being certified, so to say, by SAP, it's much easier for them to address new customers together with us than alone. And for us, we're clearly building the next generation of ecosystem. We can see trends very early about what's happening in the startup space, and we're able to continuously improve also our APIs, our technology, which then benefits all of our partners and all of our customers. From the customer perspective, I touched on this a little bit. The customers not only enjoy the access to the startups, but being able to discuss best practices of how to work with startups, how to include startup innovation in their digital transformation journeys. And the interest of startups we can see is only growing, and many studies show that an ecosystem approach in general for CIOs, CEOs is becoming increasingly important, and we want to be able to provide our customers that in a very curated fashion. So they have the opportunity to explore innovation, launch collaborations, or extend their solutions. From the founder perspective, we offer them, of course, mentors as well from inside SAP, but also from the ecosystem. We offer them the technical support and the go-to-market support, which is, if I'm honest, the most interesting for them. And we're very proud. We have the first unicorn in our portfolio, which is Big ID, that's based in Tel Aviv, where we started working with them about 4 years ago. And they made unicorn status at the end of last year. So here you can see a summary of the value proposition that we do ask the startups, though, that when they partner with us in such a program, that there is a certain commitment also on their side to make this successful. In terms of diversity and our pledge, which we call the SAP IO No Boundaries pledge, what we have seen is since we made the pledge, we were roughly at 30, just making, no, I don't have it in here, 30% when we made the pledge. And by actually giving the team the focus of just looking that bit further for diverse teams and looking that bit further for female founders especially, we actually uncover a lot of companies that we may have missed beforehand. And so we have been tracking it over the years, and gradually we're now currently at 50% of all startups have a female founder, or when we say underrepresented, it's in the specific country, the percentage of that person, for example, a nationality in the country compared to how much VC funding they get. The topic of sustainability overall is very important to SAP. Our whole mission statement is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. And we are developing all of the solutions that we have are looking at how can we, support sustainable strategies of our customers. And we differentiate a little bit between enabling technologies where our services or solutions help our customers run their businesses better, and then also by leading by example. So there are other areas that we focus on that we kind of want to show that we're, like with CO2 emissions, etc., that we're leading by example. And so we work across the different areas to really see how also the ecosystem of startups, and we see very many companies. We've just finished a program, or we're in the process of finishing a program in Munich as well, Munich and Berlin. Two of our locations teamed up to do a program in the sustainability space. And we see a lot of innovation happening that we obviously want to also make available to our customers across the different areas. And when I wanted to close by giving you an outlook of some of the programs that we have that are coming up where applications are now open. You have, if you're interested in learning more, and we'd really love to see more companies also from the MENA region join our program, but you can see the theme of sustainability is increasingly important. Many of the programs that we do are looking at specific industries and how can we improve the processes, the businesses in a sustainable manner, be it in consumer industries, be it in the energy and natural resource areas. And yeah, would love to answer any specific questions in a minute. I don't know if there's anything in the chat I haven't been able to follow while I present, but I'm looking very much forward to the dialogue that follows now.
Thank you very much, Alexa. I've put the link to your program call in the chat. There has been no questions coming up at the moment, so we'll see if they start coming in now. But thank you very much for that with the insights, and it does, you know, as we knew, what you said complements so well what Hibba was talking about, and it's nice to kind of see the more independent versus corporate accelerators perspectives joined in your commitment to sustainability, diversity, and impact. And thank you for also highlighting that you've had your unicorn, because of course, one of the things we often hear is almost that it's a trade-off. If you're going to do good, then you'll have to give up something in the business sense. And what you and Hiba have clearly shown is that sustainability, circularity, impact is at the heart of resilient, good business of the future. All this, oh, well, I'm going to trade it off, or I do no harm, is such an antiquated way of looking at business. So thank you both very, very much. Audience, please keep putting the questions in the chat. I would like to pick the questions out from the chat, because then that allows me to manage the theme. So please put them in the chat. And while you do that, I am going to start with a question for both Alexa and Hiba. You've both talked about scaling. Can you give a few thoughts and insights from both of your perspectives on what that entails, and practically what is it that you do through your programs to help startups scale?
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So scaling up is an important topic, and actually a challenge we have in Europe in general, because we have very great young startups and ideas, and then starting to bring them into different markets and usages, and really starting to make money, to be to have it said simply, or to have the solution accessible for as many people as possible, so you achieve the real impact through your solution, is not an easy thing. And of course, we have a lot of coaching over the 5-month and 4 sprints, where we go with professionals with the startups into growing their business, adapting and adjusting their business models, how to integrate impact measurement, and I want to go deeper into that later if I have the opportunity, and sustainability aspects in the core of it, and also scaling up the team and growing the team as such, because you need to have to be able to cope sustainably with the dynamic and change and growth as a startup. So coaching and mentoring is also very important. We have a very big mentors network. A lot of them responsible leaders like the Santami, who's writing in the chat, who are very well established in different areas of expertise. So it's not only like, I don't know, technology and innovation, it's marketing, it's scaling up, it's investments, it's understanding political situations for some of the products, and understanding how society as a customer, the customer context, like Alexa mentioned, there's so much to be understood. So having mentors and people you can exchange and understand and have to peer-to-peer exchange and sessions with them is very important and key. And last but not least, again, I believe that cooperations and networks are so important. It's really important to understand who is mission aligned, who is thinking alike, identify those people and start to get in touch to, you don't need to be doing everything on your own as a startup. You have so much to do. You have to, I don't know, do legal and do sales and understand so many things and have a good product. So you need to identify partners who support you and who understand where you are and what your vision is. We always ask, what's your vision long term, not how many, I don't know, products you want to sell today, but what do you want to achieve in this world to make it a better place? So this is an important aspect. I just want to follow on one small point with the unicorns. It's important to have unicorns. It's important to be competitive. I want to highlight that there is also the zebra context, where you have financial returns, and at the same time, the white lines in the zebra, making sure that your impact and your product is clean and green and having a positive impact. So fast growth is important, but also sustainable growth is important, and understanding what is the impact of your business. So there's so many models of success here.
Hiba, I didn't want to interrupt you, but there was a comment that you're not very audible, and I had to put my volume up for you. So for the next bit, if you could just, make sure your mic is a little bit adjusted. And thank you very much for mentioning zebras. And actually, in the MENA context, I think it's worth mentioning camels, colleague of mine who wrote a book called Camels, Tigers and Unicorns is very much about that, is actually creating these camels that grow more slowly, but that are resilient and so on. So I think I do love camels and zebras. So thank you very much for mentioning that. Alexa, if I could hand back over to you with the same question, please, of what scaling means for you and what is it that actually your program does in practice?
So we also have mentors, especially, so we have former founders in the community, but also at SAP, a lot of colleagues who often don't actually realize all the expertise they have until they start sharing it. So people who've been doing sales for a long time who can come and just take a look at an account or a deal and talk a startup through how they would approach it and brainstorm with them. So that's one side. I think the main way what we've seen startups where we see them scaling is just through the customer access, right? So for us to be able to say we have a marketplace where all of our customers can go to look for innovations, having our salespeople incentivized to sell any of the solutions that are on this App Center does create a situation where the startups can more easily sell their solutions, and through the increased revenue that they're able to generate, move up in our partner system, because we have different levels of partnership, all the way to having SAP also participate in their marketing, all the way to, and this the big ID I referenced earlier, the unicorn, they're what we call a solution extension partner, where actually SAP sells the solution on behalf of the startup. Now, this is the only one that we have, but because you need to fulfill certain revenue thresholds to get to that status. But our role, and I see the job of my team, is also to help the startups grow quickly so that they can then become full partners, when they're full partners from the beginning, but partners, different partner levels, so that the SAP partner organization kicks in, so to say, and supports them in their sales. And the scaling is really through access to customers, and because we're also worldwide, we have businesses and offices worldwide, we're able to help. For example, if we take a company from Egypt that wants to access the European market or the US market, we have this a lot also from companies from Israel who want to work in the US. We have the structure in place to help them enter markets and get access to customers.
Thank you, Alexa. And then following on from that, then, Pasent had a question about how do you select and what is your criteria for the countries that you focus on, either for hubs or for actually your choice of startup recruitment?
So the hubs where we have hubs, we look at VC activity, startup activity primarily as the first, because we need a certain ecosystem and we need a certain again, this is going back to the days when we were all physical still, right? So the local aspect was important. Like opening now in Shanghai, we see obviously a lot of activity in China. We ourselves have labs in China. So we also have the second kind of criteria is what's the infrastructure on the SAP side? How big is the SAP customer base in particular markets? Because often if a startup joins a program, for example, in Singapore, they're looking to address the South Asian market. And so we need to look at how big is the customer base, because to fulfill our value proposition and our promise, we obviously need to have a certain customer base there. So it's a combination of those two aspects that leads us to, or has led us to, open locations as we have. And for the second question, part of your question, Shima, in terms of where we do recruitment, it's where we have reach. So in many countries, we have SAP colleagues who are doing a lot of local startup activities, and they help us with the recruitment. Other things is through conferences like this one, where we are able to spread the word. But we still have a long way to go to get truly global coverage, I have to admit, in terms of our startup scouting and recruitment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alexa. So I also run an accelerator in Cambridge and have been a mentor for many years. one of the biggest challenges I find working with startups towards the sustainability and impact aspect of things is that, like you, we recruit already startups with a vision, with a sustainability orientation, and almost a triple bottom line, multiple forms of value in their head. So they come in, they are tackling a significant problem, they want to create economic and social and environmental value. And then this is where the problem starts. Because the mission of the venture is sustainable, quote unquote, that the sustainability thinking stops there. So what do you and Hiba through your programs do to make sure that things like unintended consequences are taken into account, that notions of value are broadened and addressed, and how they run their business becomes as central to what they're doing? So Hiba, if I could invite you to answer first.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that that we do directly and indirectly. So within the program, it's about enabling and trying to go through your business model and be able to make impact criteria sexy for investors, how to quantify them, how to make sure that it's understandable, how to make sure if you are contributing to a solution in terms of impact matrix. And I invite you everyone to look at the impact measurement project, because they have a really interesting and very well applicable one. How much you're contributing to the solution in terms of just avoiding harm, etc. So there are so many. I think it's a challenge for a startup to have all of these topics set on top of it, trying to understand and quantify impact and sustainability factors. And there we have to support case by case, and also having a common understanding in that. And also what's important is the role we play around it. So for example, like me, also being responsible for the investments at the foundation and sustainable finance and these conversations, we're trying to get those investors on board closer who are already investing in impact solutions and understand that both of the factors, profit and impact, are valuable, but also go to the mainstream investors and others who are still not seeing it as an urgency and a core, and making it attractive for the long-term vision and long-term return. So we have to play, Alexa also mentioned it, on the whole ecosystem. And when we talk about systemic transformation and change of the value system of the economic system, we have to go to the roots of it and try to play, like as a foundation, we have the flexibility to tackle it from different ways. And I think here is, with Alexa being here, we are a very good example of how much is needed to be done from different sides. You need to improve the collaborations with corporates in order to and create a common language and make it possible to scale great solutions as fast as possible. So they support them in order to communicate and to have an experience exchange. This is key. And maybe to mention one of the networks which is really interesting for a lot of MENA startups, the Digital Arabia Network. Which is launched by 5 female founders, by the way. And a main focus is to make it easier to understand the landscape of startups, of innovations in these countries, and make it possible to see and to communicate the solutions and the impact possibly. So it's good to plug into different networks. I know there is an inflation of possibilities how to get in touch with people, but to identify the right ones and work on common goals.
Thank you, Hiba. Alexa, same question for you about how you handle broader notions of sustainability beyond the myopic one that startups tend to have.
So we take a look, and this is what we do with sustainability is the same we do with diversity. So we take a look at it very much from a business perspective, to say how can, and the focus for us, again, like Eva said, we take slightly different angles at it, but for us, the focus is a lot on how can the startup solutions help businesses around the world run their businesses in a more sustainable way. And that can be through carbon tracking. It can be through looking at the workplace and how to make that a more, and processes in the workplace. It can be in the supply chain, and how can we track child labor in the supply chain through QR codes. How can we make sure that the food that we're eating is really what it says on the packaging? So it can be it's very diverse. And for us, the main goal is to always ask, is this solution going to make a company run better? Or is this solution going to make one of our customers more sustainable? And there is a big need from the customer perspective. And we have, for example, many customers working with us on the current sustainability program, plus Accenture as a partner, because of the importance, because everybody is taking a look at this. And so we work less with the startups on their own processes, but really try and identify what sustainability need are they fulfilling or fixing on a customer perspective. Not sure that answers the question, Shima, but I hope it does.
It does a little bit. So I'm going to probe for both of you a little bit more, actually, on, and if you, I'll give you two questions together because it's all related. One is, how do you measure that sustainability and impact? What metrics are you putting? Because you've both kind of started to hint at that. And also how you're communicating that impact to the investors, which is a conversation that Hiba had started. And just kind of end also with a comment of, is sustainability and impact sexy for investors? If I could kind of send it back to Hiba to give you a chance to catch your breath, Alexa. Hiba.
Yeah, sure. You're asking about ways to communicate and to make it.
So how do you measure, can communicate impact and sustainability to both the startups and investors?
I think it's important to see the whole spectrum of each and everything you do and what the impact it could have. So there are, I don't know, intelligent products. If we talk about, I don't know, a startup we have this year, Facility, who has a solution, an AI solution for people with disabilities to be able to get on the web and understand the context and be part of, I don't know, the digital environment and have access to it. So this is an intelligent product that is inclusive as such in itself, and it's all built. If you look into the focus on women in business and having diverse team as an impact on society also. So there are so many factors and perspectives. We have Aqua Farms, which is from New Guinea, and they are empowering women with their solution. And I know when we say empowering women or neglected communities or whatever, everyone thinks it's a charity, or it's something that you do for people who are like not part of the business community. But we want to showcase that there are solutions with a business model that integrates community in the core and helps young entrepreneurs to have access to sustainable businesses, etc. So there are many ways to address and have impact translated into the way we do business. And this is a very big focus on that. And as I mentioned, and as Alexa mentioned, this makes sustainability tangible. It's a soft and not very tangible issue. And I don't know, we're putting the SDGs everywhere, trying to make this plan very accessible and as a framework, making it easier for us. But we have to underline ways to get there. It's really important to show that it's possible by doing this and that, and by showing examples, and by quantifying success, which is normally a qualitative success feeling, having an impact. And It's something we do ourselves every day. Like we're trying to refine our strategy within Respond and trying to measure our impact ourselves. So we can start with ourselves and create a common language in that and improve. So I hope I'm answering your question. But I think highlighting different ways of having impact and that it's a common ground and actually the only chance for long-term success. I think many people still think it's optional. I think I would claim here that there is no way for long-term success unless thinking about planet, people, and prosperity and having this as a core of your innovation. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Hiba. I totally agree. I am on what you might call a crusade to change the definition of entrepreneurship. I get very irritated when people talk about entrepreneurship and responsible entrepreneurship or sustainable entrepreneurship, and you think, no, that's entrepreneurship. Everything else is irresponsible entrepreneurship or unsustainable entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship at the core for several years, but definitely going forward, entrepreneurship of the future is sustainable, circular, responsible. There is no other way. So then that final question that you had started that conversation of, is sustainability and impact sexy to investors?
It's to Alexa or to me?
No, it's still you, Hiba. That was kind of the continuation of your...
It is definitely sexy. And I have to tell you, seeing even the younger generations, like we are young and everything, but there are even younger generations, they think it's the only way to be sexy. And luckily, maybe many don't have to have the fight we are having. Like I'm a pure mechanical engineer, grew up in mechanical engineering environment. And I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not a serial entrepreneur, I'm a serial intrapreneur. I'm trying with institutions to implement change. And it's always like been either being a pure mechanical engineer or having a social impact. And because I grew up knowing that my purpose or what I want to achieve has to have a social impact, I'm combining it and trying to make it communicated as sexy as I feel it is. So I believe it's sexy, and I believe it's necessary. And I think we'll have to communicate about it less in the future, having these new impulses and having it becoming common sense.
Great. The same way, I hope it becomes the same way that the topic of diversity should hopefully not be a topic, or that women in tech or women, female founders, my hope is always that we still have to talk about it the same way we have to talk about the importance of the SDGs still, but my hope is always at some point it's just given and nobody has to talk about it anymore. But we're not quite there yet, and that's why it's good we're having this conversation. I just wanted to add what Hiba said. We're also seeing a number of new, not new, but VCs now focused nearly exclusively on topics of climate or particular areas of the SDGs. So an example is Extantia, they used to be called Beyond Black, based in Berlin too, that we work with on these kind of programs because they have access to a lot of these interesting companies in their portfolio that they can then recommend to us. But I think also on a VC perspective, I think the topic of diversity is becoming more top of mind, but also like the purpose of the startups. And what they're actually trying to achieve and how that will grow or how that will help them grow over time is also important.
Thank you, Alexa. Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot. Could you expand a little bit on the metrics of sustainability that you use and how you communicate that both with and between the startups and the investors?
So we're at the beginning of our journey in the area of sustainability from the startup perspective by just having run the first 2 programs and now looking at increasing that, like I shared earlier. We do use the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a framework for that. And we look, the companies that we work with, we look at how can they directly or indirectly impact the progress of any of the 17 SDGs. And so that is kind of the underlying framework. And then that we use to evaluate how sustainable are they. I'd be I'd love to hear if there are better criteria to use that we can use, and maybe Shima, you actually have some that you're working with in Cambridge. But that's currently what we're looking at. And then we're looking, the second part of the criteria, which is important for us as a team because of the value proposition again, is how do these solutions then, once they actually support one of the 17 goals, is how do they then enhance the SAP value proposition or the solution that we already have and that we're positioning to customers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alexa. And you said the question, I was actually going to throw it out to the audience as well, is if, you know, people who are in the session already interested in this topic, and therefore insights into how the audience are using, communicating and using metrics around sustainability would be really interesting. You're right, yes, in Cambridge but through the University of Cambridge, there's a model and a tool called the Value Mapping and Value Explorer, and that's all about unpacking these different forms of values for different stakeholders that then allow you to do exactly what you described, is to kind of put sustainability at the heart of the value proposition. So already before you've even built a business model, I think you know that sustainability is inherently in there. You've looked at efficiency, you've looked at your unintended consequences, and you've created value that is both for your customer, but also for society, the environment, your investors, and so on. So very happy to share. And at some point, actually, I'll put a link in the chat. But if there are any other metrics, I am fascinated, and this is at the heart of what I do with leading a program on entrepreneurship for sustainability. And Heba and Alexa will also be interested. So please share, audience. It's a two-way dialogue. So thanks a lot, Alexa, for that. And in that case, there's a couple of questions in the chat that are, one is specifically for you, Alexa, and that is, how do you run different accelerators programs with different topics? Oh, no, do you run different accelerator programs with different topics in each country?
Yes. So in the case, sometimes we team up. So this, like in the case that we just run sustainability in Munich and Berlin, we ran together. Typically, in each location, we have a combination of a topic like sustainability with an industry aspect, so that we try, because that makes it easier for us to connect with customers. So if it's in like circular economy, or if it's in a climate action topic, then we are able to group the customers more clearly. So typically a program has a certain line of business focus, a certain industry focus, or a certain theme focus, because that helps us group VCs better, mentors better, and then customers. And the way we select the topics is a combination of what is of strategic importance to SAP, what our customers asking for. So we actually have salespeople in the room, we have product managers in the room, and then also when we make the selection of the startups, but also, of course, looking, we're permanently in exchange with the ecosystem. So we're looking also at what trends do we see in the market, where do we see a lot of innovation happening, and it's a combination of these three factors really that then enables us to make decisions. And we also have similar topics. So as an example, we had data and analytics in Berlin last year in the fall. This year in the fall, we're moving that topic to Tokyo, just because we're seeing very different innovation happening in the Japanese market, or primarily in that part of the world, than we did, for example, when we ran it in Europe. And so we also changed geographies just to see different trends that are happening in the different countries. Right. I hope that answered the question for Jonas.
I think it did, unless, Jonas, was that what you were looking for? Was that okay? Okay, in that case, Heba, I will come to you in a minute about asking about themes as well, but I'd like to continue with Alexa to follow on from that. In terms of, could you outline how you're looking to recruit and how you communicate to bring people into those differently themed locations, programs, and so on, particularly since you highlighted a lot about diversity and underrepresented groups.
And I think there's one question in the chat also, how can we increase the number of MENA companies then in the program? We have a number of different ways of scouting or recruiting startups. There's part of it is desktop research by access to certain databases where we can just filter through companies that could be of interest that are at the right stage. Because I think I never mentioned this, but we're typically at the Series A, Series B stage. So companies that we work with have first customers, they have an established team, they have some financing so that they are ready to scale. And we've tested this with earlier, more seed stage companies, and we really have come that the sweet spot for us is a Series A, Series B stage. I may have forgotten to mention that a little bit earlier. But when we look at recruiting across countries, we work with a lot of networks. We work with established organizations that are active in the startup space. We work with VCs. We have a lot of alumni that are recommending other companies that they know who could be of interest to us. And then obviously we have social media, etc. If we're looking to, for example, increase the number of companies from Egypt as an example, the best way that we have found this works is through well-established local associations, networks that are working closely with startups locally. Because if we post something on a one of our social media channels, the chance that a super innovative company based in Cairo is going to see this is very slim. Whereas if this is something that is made more available in public by a local organization, we get a lot more, and we see this again and again, that once we work with a local champion, that we then get a lot more applications coming in and a lot more interest. So I'm very open if anybody in the audience has such an opportunity, an association or a network that's well established in the startup space. We have a team that can, we can do a webinar, we can do an Ask Me Anything session, anything of that nature is possible, or to dive deeper into some of the topics that we're interested in. That works really well. But the challenge is we're a relatively small team, and so we're very much dependent on people to work with us in the local or in the different regions to make everybody aware of what we're doing. So I see there's some offers to help, and I'll definitely get back to you. That's great.
The offers. Alexa, I'm going to move to Hiba in a second, but I'll kind of give you a heads up that my next question to you is going to be about kind of the challenges you have in recruiting, because at the moment you're underrepresented in the MENA region. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the key challenges you're facing that are resulting in this? And then that goes into the question that was in the chat of how can we help you with those challenges? So I'll leave you with that thought while we go back to Hiba, really picking up on the notion of the themes. Are your programs themed by year, by location, by what? And again, how do you recruit and communicate to attract this more diverse audience?
It's a very good question, and actually, as we are, we've launched 1.5 years ago. We're relatively young as a program. We started the first year with having specific SDGs in the focus. First year we had SDG 8, 9, 11: decent work, economic growth, sustainable cities and communities, and industry and innovation and infrastructure. And then this year we decided to have topics in the core, and as Alexa mentioned, we have similar targets but different approaches. As a foundation, we are more open to bring people together. We don't have a specific target in terms of connecting them with us, because we are a foundation in terms of their product. We are more looking into what they need to grow whatever direction they want to go, and what could be scalable, and look into their business models and relevance, and then connect them with the right people from the network and beyond. So it's a bit of a different approach. Like Alexa mentioned, it's very different how people react to a topic like this year, responsible economy. If you look from Europe or from the US or from Africa, we don't have a specific focus on MENA, although this is something I'm very passionate about, and it's important to take a look on that. But we are global, and we ask about mentors, coaches, and startups from all over the world. So there's a possibility to plug into the different program points, partners, or in terms of network, and in terms of application. And there I see the biggest potential, because as I mentioned, we look into the technology, which should be a market viable product, have a prototype, have a first basis, and then wanting to scale up all over the world. And we can support with this. However, the applications we get, as what has mentioned from the MENA region, are, as from my experience, are not the best from the region. And this is something we need to highlight positive examples, even more positive solutions. There's so much happening on the digital side, which is, I would say, exceeding a lot of EU products or developed products or products available in other places around the world, and also scalable in other, like the Latin region or others. So I think we need to play a role in highlighting them and in being visible there. As an example, when we started this year talking about mobility for human development, we decided to go in the regions first, ask about the topics and the themes and how they understand mobility. And then from there, we're going to be defining the global question. So this is an approach which is different to what we're doing now, by defining a question or a topic and getting different impulses from all over the world. And we definitely see that, I don't know, micro-mobility is maybe more exciting in New York, but when you talk about Africa and Kigali, there are other solutions. And we talk about visa issues and maybe more digital access to the rest of the world in a different way for human development. So to summarize, because my brain is going to too many directions, I think we need to support and promote founders from the MENA region more to be visible. I think we need to look into the opportunities of scaling up solutions from the region all over the world and in similar environments too. And again, support international collaborations beyond borders, because I think this is a limiting factor. I know it from having built a research institute in Egypt for heart disease research, and I know how there is still a disconnect in terms of R&D happening on that part of the world, connecting to corporates and business in other parts of the world. Yeah.
Thank you, Hiba. You've covered a lot of ground. Very interesting. Can I ask you to please put in the chat, because there's also a question for you about whether you're looking for startups at Series A or B or early startups. Can you put in the chat your target audience? So who are you targeting in terms of their stage, but also 3 points that are on your wish list. What are the 3 main things that your chosen startups for your program would need to meet? So your 3 wish list for the startups. And Alexa, I'll get back to you with the challenges that you're facing in recruiting in the MENA region and how the audience and others might help or connect you to others that can help.
Yeah, I just a little bit build on what I mentioned earlier, is that we're a relatively small team of about 25 that are working on this globally. So as I said, small input, large output. So we're a small team, and it's just a matter of reach and being able to focus. And I think so the creating awareness for the programs is kind of a first step, that people know. SAP is very well established as a company. For example, if we take Egypt as an example, we're very well established in Egypt, but the startup activities are limited, or what we do as a startup focused unit within SAP is we don't have the reach. And so anything to help drive awareness, I think that's the first step of just at least having entrepreneurs, founders know that there is this offering, that there is an opportunity, that you don't, at least currently, need to come. You don't need to leave your home country, basically. You can take part in these programs completely virtually, which is one of the benefits of the pandemic. I'd say one of the few benefits of actually having a pandemic is that we've gone more virtual, and that gives people, access. We don't need to talk about visas. We don't need to look at, getting flights and looking for accommodation and all of that. So once we get the word out, and for the programs that I shared, we can do webinars if there are local associations. I think the awareness is the biggest factor, getting that reach, awareness, and then I think the rest actually normally falls into place, we've seen.
Great, thank you, Alexa. Alexa, if I could then ask you to do what Hiba's doing, is because you've talked about reaching out to startups. Your chart, the 2x2 matrix, was showing that you had early stage and you had scale. If you could be more specific about the phases, the kind of the commercial maturity of these startups, and I know you've got a more digital focus as well, but just be more specific about who your target is. And if you could also put 3 criteria on your top of your wish list that these startups need to meet. That is fantastic. Thank you, Hiba, for doing that. So Hiba, back to the same question that Alexa just answered about what are your key challenges that the audience could help you with, or could connect you to someone who could help you with? What do you need?
It's a good question. I think, again, recognizing the hotspots in the region and who to go to, and the channels to even make it more visible, and to encourage to apply for a program, even if it's based in Munich, as a program with a global focus, is a very important point. Because a lot of people think, like, if it's in Germany, it would be focused on Germans, or this might be not relevant, or the accelerator has to be on the ground in the area. And I would really encourage also out of experience that it's good to get and go somewhere else and take the whole experience. And of course, like Alexa mentioned, we have a lot of it digital now. I think learning from entrepreneurs all over the world during the process itself of the acceleration is a great added value. And even if it's not the pure core focus now of the startup, but it's important for the longevity and the long-term development and success of the program, I would encourage to participate in programs who are in the core on the same value system, even if it's out of the comfort zone right now. So connecting to local partners who have an eye on the ones who have potential to grow, and encourage even more what I mentioned here, also the personal growth, and taking, and it's important to focus on the entrepreneurs themselves too, because it's always about the business, and then you leave the entrepreneur and then they burn out or whatever happens. So I would really encourage the importance of participating in a program which has this in the core. I want to actually mention an example to make it tangible, like solutions. There is, I mentioned it in the chat we had last year, the startup Hawadawa by Karim Taraf, who is also now a responsible leader in our network. And he has an AI solution combined with a hardware solution for air quality measurement, inspired by being from Cairo and the whole pollution thing, air pollution experience we all have growing up in the city. And he's based in Munich. He's an Egyptian, has an international team. And they started having their hardware stations and their software solutions spread in different cities in Germany. They also now thinking of scaling up and having concrete discussions in African countries. And I think this is when you ask about scalability and about the solution, which is having sustainability in the core and the whole business model based on using data for the sake of climate action, for the sake of health, and for the sake of economic growth, and acknowledging that it's working with cities and working with global partners is important. They have a great potential. They have been selected as the Digital Startup of the Year in Germany last year. So this is a good example to look into, thinking out of the box and global, and appreciating the value of connecting on different levels and cooperation. I would really take this example as a good one.
Thank you, Heba. And I've got a kind of, again, the good thing about the kind of the examples and the diversity. So my next question is a diversity question, but that also if you could answer it with an example. Some of the work I've been doing has been looking at the risk of investing in all male teams. And yet we all know that all male teams get a disproportionately high proportion of the investment. It can be as high as 80+% of all the investment that's being made into startups. And yet we look at the data and we know that gender balanced teams return higher profits, they use less resources, they do better at times of adversity. How do you handle diversity in the teams at both the recruitment stage? So do you reject all male teams, or do you fix all male teams? How do you just handle it there at the choice, the communications with the founding teams, and then once they're on the program? And if you could give us an example of someone who's done it really well with a diverse team, then that would be great. Alexa, would you start, please?
Yes, happy to. So the criteria we set for any of the companies we work with is the same across the board. So we look at the team, we look at the traction they've had, we look at the market opportunity, the solution itself, and how much is it actually addressing a need of one of our customers. The additional filter, and it's a question that we actually ask the screeners, that we have a committee that comes together, is the topic of diversity. How diverse is this team? So we do not reject all male teams because we have this 40% goal. So we communicate strongly on the importance of diversity. I think because we've been doing this now consistently also for 2 years, a lot of the companies that actually apply have a diverse team. It's interesting to see how those that have done really good research on us actually push this to the forefront to woo us into selecting them, which I think is good. It shows that they have first of all done their homework, but that they also recognize why we're doing this, and we communicate very broadly during the whole scouting process of that importance to us. When we select, it's basically we have the startups themselves self-identify as being part of the SAP IO No Boundaries program. So we do not ask why they feel that they are underrepresented, but basically explain to them our definition of an underrepresented founder, which is, like I mentioned, it's the percentage of population versus the amount who get funding. And this varies very much. Obviously, if we're looking at in the UK, this would be very different to in Egypt as it is to Germany. But we do not reject non-diverse teams, but because of the communication that we're doing around the topic, we actually see a high percentage of teams that are diverse. Because yeah, that's what we see.
That's great, and it's a really important point to make, and I'm glad you've made it so clearly, because we do have men in the audience, and I wouldn't want them to feel that this is a crusade against men or all male teams, but I think it's important to understand that all male teams are the highest risk proposition, and yet for some reason there is a culture of investing in them. But if you go in as a founder of an all-male team, I think it's important for them to know that you haven't got the best team you could have, and how to kind of to evolve the team to make sure that diversity, that cognitive diversity, gender diversity is almost an easy win because you've already got people who look and think differently, but other underrepresented teams give you that cognitive diversity that brings in the interdisciplinarity and everything that just makes sure that your team can be more creative, more innovative, and can handle adversity. Because by nature, adversity is stuff you hadn't thought of. And if you're all thinking along the same lines, then that increases the risk of you being hit with stuff that you hadn't thought of. So fantastic. Thank you, Alexa, for that. Hiba, same question to you. How do you handle diversity at recruitment and during the support stages? How do you work with non-diverse teams? How do you react to them and so on?
It's also a very good question. So actually, maybe an interesting story. Like last year, we had a very clear session within the program about diversity and inclusion and how the power of diverse teams, and we brought it on bigger stages, the topic of the power of diversity and leadership and all of that. And the most interesting thing is that a lot of entrepreneurs asked the question of, okay, we got very moved and touched by the conversation, but I have no clue how to implement this in my company, and how can I transfer my company to be a more diverse company. So there's a challenge of implementing this change. And I think startups and entrepreneurs have a great chance because they're starting from scratch basically, or founding the teams from the beginning. So when you think it from the beginning, it's easier than having to, like exchange those for those or whatever. So thinking it from the beginning is the easiest solution. Being there, it's important to be taking care in each recruitment on this aspect. And I'm not really a fan of excluding male employers or employees or whatever. And I'm also not a fan of the quota, because I studied in Germany at a time where there was the statement in all job applications, women and people with disabilities are welcome to apply for this job, and I didn't feel very comfortable to have it as an exclusive criteria. So the only chance is to have it in the mindset and to be conscious about the importance for the products that being developed, like Shia mentioned. If you're talking about artificial intelligence and digitization, it's so important to have a whole society reflected in your team, so it's reflected in your products, and it just makes sense. It's just logical. So there is a real chance and opportunity here to see it as a necessity for society, as an important chance for you for growth and to grow sustainably. And one thing we're trying to do, and I think as soon as you start thinking the right way, you find ways to do it, is that we really choose and select speakers, female speakers on stages, make sure that we have a balanced stage talking about tech, about investment, about all of that. So, and make it clear how the advantages are for investors. Like there are statistics about it and numbers, like you mentioned, Shima. So it's becoming easier because we're proving the point logically, and this is a great support. And on a foundation level, we set the topic of EDB, equity, diversity, and belonging / inclusion as a main focus this year. We have end of this week, the EDB weeks, where we really want to have a conversation on how to define criteria and how to make it something that's common sense, like we mentioned, and what needs to be focused on from education until later in management and leadership. So it's not done yet. I think we still have to look into ways, but I can only encourage and underline that it's an opportunity and opens much more doors and chances for the companies themselves.
I do want to add just though, because I'm not a fan either, like you said, Hiba, I used to be like quotas and all of that, but I have seen that when you do set yourself a bold target, that you are actually, it's easier to achieve than if you don't, if you just talk about it. Because we've been really tracking this now for the last 2 years. And since we set ourselves the target of at least 40%, and the question I have to the team every time is when we have made a selection or when we're going into a selection is how many of them are underrepresented? And just the question the whole time is that I don't need to ask this anymore. I don't actually. They come straight away and say, by the way, 50% is that. It makes people aware of the need to just keep an eye on the diversity. And by doing that, the numbers have gone up. And that's why I find talking about it still, and like I said earlier, I hope at one point we don't need to do this anymore, but still talking about it and actually setting goals or making sure that it's top of mind when no matter what we're doing, is important. It's the same way as is hiring at SAP. There is a big diversity aspect. We're an equal employer, whatever the official term is. But even there, we look at, are the job descriptions biased in any form? And we have been asked as managers to reduce the competencies to 5 bullet points, because if we have a list of 15, it might create bias in those who apply and those who don't apply. And keeping things like that top of mind actually does force a change over time, or enables a change over time.
Brilliant, Alexa. Thank you so much for adding that. Absolutely. It is about changing mindsets and cultures, about the way we do things, about the norm. What is the way we do things, rather than, oh, we want to do something different. And I'm not sure how I feel about us not talking about it, because we will never stop talking about profits, for example. You will always ask, how much money are you making? I think it's an entirely legitimate question also to probe into the team of how diverse is your team, because that is, again, a risk metric. And I'm going to throw a couple of cliched statements there out at you, but exactly what you said about what gets measured gets done. So I think it should be a measurement, and measurements have targets as well. We don't measure things for the sake of measuring. So we measure, we have targets, we have the discussion. If nothing else, it's embarrassing. If you measure it and you say, well, I'm hardly doing it, begs the question, why aren't you? If you're telling us you're amazing, actually, why aren't you amazing across the board? And another one that I like, and I don't know who to attribute this to, but I saw a quote a few years ago that I absolutely love about, you do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, you do better. So having these role models, these conversations, these metrics, you look at the metrics, you refine your metrics, you have new targets, and you're continuously on that virtuous and continuous improvement cycle. So ladies, it has been, as I expected, absolutely fascinating and insightful listening to you. We have 2 minutes left. I'd like to give both of you a chance for 30 seconds to have any last things, anything you still wanted to say that came up from the discussion, something you wished I had asked you. But yes, final remarks from both of you. Hiba, if you could again go first, please.
And save time and build on what you just said. I think it's really important to optimize the matrix and think about how to improve things as a constant process. Like, I think what I did before was like having it as an urgent now instead of seeing it as a long life mission. And now I see it as a long life mission. So having this done, and please don't do it behind closed doors. I'm appreciating very much the value of communication, learning that it's good to communicate about things you're thinking, and this makes it much easier to break silos. So talk about it, exchange, and have courage.
Thank you, Hiba. Fantastic. Transparency, courage, and talking. Fab. Alexa, any last remarks?
For me, there would just be a wish, and I think there was a lot of offers of this already in the chat, is that we do get into a dialogue with some of the established networks, associations that are in the MENA region, to be able to be more inclusive also there of all of the innovation that is in the region to be able to give that innovation or make that innovation accessible to our 450,000 customers worldwide. So that's kind of, for me, would be kind of a closing wish. And I know there were lots of offers, but I can be reached over LinkedIn or directly now.
Great. Thank you, Alexa. Another great point as well about, that collaboration, that knowledge sharing, that resource sharing, and in general, as both the MENA region and the accelerator community matures, each one has their place, their position, their resources, and being able to share and collaborate rather than compete is absolutely the way forward, where each one adds something to the community and the ecosystem and supports and are kind of offer the best support to those startups so that the startups also know where to go. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, audience, for your interesting questions as well that allowed me to filter them in. It's been a great session, and I hope that exciting things happen after this, because we've raised a lot of points, and as Heba said, we've started a dialogue, it's transparent, we dealt with thorny issues, but it is the start of a journey. We are all maturing together, and let's see action after this, rather than this having been a fascinating hour and a half and then nothing happened. So please do connect, collaborate, and I look forward to seeing many of you in different guises, in different context. And thank you, Rakameya, for hosting this session, and Francesca for being such a great support in the background. Thank you. And as Pacentis put in the chat, I encourage you to attend the next session. Thank you very much.